There was no fight, no ultimatum, no dramatic moment you could point to and say, "That is where it ended." It ended in a silence so quiet you mistook it for peace. Most people spend months, sometimes years, trying to figure out why someone pulled away. They replay conversations. They search for what they said wrong. They wonder if they missed a signal, a shift, a moment that might have changed everything if they had only caught it in time. But here is what nobody tells you. You did catch it. You felt it. You just didn't know what you were feeling. There is a specific hidden moment, one that happens inside another person before a single word is spoken, before a single behavior changes, where they make a quiet, invisible decision. A decision that does not announce itself. A decision that, once made, almost never reverses. And by the time you feel its consequences, it has already been weeks, sometimes months, in the making. What you thought was a slow fade was never slow at all. It was instant. You just witnessed the aftermath in slow motion. But this is where it gets darker. Because the moment someone decides to stop emotionally investing in you does not look like anything you were taught to watch for. It does not arrive with coldness. It does not arrive with anger or distance or sudden cruelty. It arrives wrapped in normalcy. They still show up. They still respond. They still say the right things at the right times. But something beneath all of that has already shifted. And the terrifying part is that the shift happened inside a single, unwitnessed moment. A moment that looked from the outside like nothing at all. Understanding what creates that moment and what happens inside a person just before it is not just psychological insight. It is the kind of awareness that changes the way you move through every relationship you will ever have. The first thing to understand is that people do not withdraw their emotional investment because they stop caring suddenly. Emotional detachment is never a sudden event, even when it feels that way from the outside. What appears sudden is actually the final exhale at the end of a long internal struggle that the other person carried almost entirely alone. Researchers in attachment behavior have identified this as a form of emotional regulation, a point at which the nervous system, overwhelmed by repeated cycles of hope and disappointment, makes a quiet executive decision: protect yourself now or keep bleeding. And the mind always, eventually, chooses protection. What you witnessed as the beginning of the distance was actually the resolution of a conflict you never even knew was happening. The second layer of this is more uncomfortable. The hidden moment does not happen because of a single event. It happens because of a pattern of small moments that were never addressed. Small moments where the person felt unseen, where they reached and found nothing, where they tried to communicate something important in a way that was easy to miss, and it was missed. Not out of malice, not because you didn't care, but because the language they were using was not spoken out loud. It was behavioral. It was energetic. It was in the way they paused just a little longer before answering, in the way they stopped bringing up the thing that had been quietly hurting them, in the way they asked for something small one last time, and when it didn't come, they filed it away somewhere you were never given access to. And here is the part most people completely miss. By the time someone reaches the hidden moment of emotional withdrawal, they have usually already mourned the relationship in private. They have already had the grief. They have already cried, not in front of you, but in the space between who they hoped you were and who they finally accepted you to be. So when you finally notice the distance, when you finally feel the shift, you are not at the beginning of the crisis. You are at the end of a story that began without you. The version of them standing in front of you has already done the hard work of letting go. You are still in the first chapter of a loss they have been living for months. This is why conversations at that point feel hollow. This is why reassurances don't land the way they used to. This is why trying harder suddenly feels like it makes things worse instead of better. Because you are speaking to someone who has already arrived at a conclusion, and they are watching to see if you will prove that conclusion right. And every rushed gesture, every sudden effort that only appeared once the distance became undeniable, confirms what they quietly decided, that the effort was never really there. It was only summoned when you felt you were losing something. Psychologically, this aligns with a pattern called avoidant emotional withdrawal, the point at which a person's attachment system, exhausted from the cycle of seeking and not receiving, begins to rewrite its own narrative. It is no longer a story of two people building something. It becomes a story of one person finally choosing themselves. And once that rewriting begins, it is extraordinarily difficult to undo. Not because the person has become cold, but because their self-preservation instinct has finally overridden their desire for connection. Now pause for a moment and sit with this. If you are watching this, there is something specific it is bringing up for you. Either you have been on the receiving end of this kind of quiet withdrawal, and you are still trying to understand what you did, what you missed, whether you could have changed anything, or you are the person who has lived this from the inside, who made that quiet decision yourself and is only now putting language to what that moment felt like. Either way, this question deserves to be asked directly. How many times have you noticed a shift in someone and told yourself it was nothing, because naming it would have required a conversation you were not ready to have? And here is what nobody talks about. The hidden moment of emotional withdrawal is not just about the person who withdraws. It is equally about the environment created by both people, one that made it feel safer to go silent than to speak. Because before someone reaches that point of quiet decision, there is almost always a moment, often several moments, where they tried, in their own way, to say something was wrong. But vulnerability requires safety. And if the emotional environment of the relationship communicated, even subtly, that their honesty would be minimized, deflected, or met with defensiveness, then they did what every emotionally intelligent person eventually does. They stopped being vulnerable. They started protecting the truth of their inner world from a space that had shown it could not hold that truth safely. This is the part that carries the real weight. Because it means the hidden moment of emotional withdrawal is not just a story about being left. It is a story about how emotional safety either grows or quietly collapses between two people, and how most of us are never taught to read the signals of that collapse until it is already complete. What changes everything is not catching the moment after it has happened. It is developing the kind of emotional awareness that recognizes the conditions that lead to it, and choosing, in real time, to create something different. That means learning to be the kind of presence someone does not feel the need to protect themselves from. It means understanding that the most dangerous relationship patterns are not the dramatic ones. They are the quiet ones, the slow erosions, the moments of reaching that go unanswered so many times that the person simply stops reaching. Once you see it that clearly, you cannot unsee it. The real hidden truth of this entire dynamic is simple and devastating in equal measure. Emotional investment does not die because love ends. It dies because people get tired of being the only one in the room who is actually present. And that exhaustion does not announce itself. It builds in silence, across dozens of small moments, until one unremarkable day. Nothing explodes, nothing breaks, nothing even happens. And yet something is over. The decision has been made. The door has been closed quietly from the inside, and all the noise you make on the outside of it afterward cannot change what was decided in that silence. But there is a question now living in the part of you that knows this deeply. What happens inside someone after they make that decision? What do they carry with them? What do they feel in the moments when they almost change their mind? That is a layer of emotional truth that lives somewhere else, and it is worth understanding. Have you ever felt someone slowly disappear while they were still standing right in front of you, and realized, somewhere deep down, that you had already lost them before you ever understood what was slipping away? If that has happened to you, say something in the comments, because you are not the only one who has felt that particular kind of silence.